If you've ever been caught riding dirty, then this podcast is dedicated to you. This is the 2000s Chart Show.
The 2000s Chart Show. The 2000s Chart Show.
Yes, indeed, this is the 2000s Chart Show, the podcast where every week we are reliving the 40 biggest selling songs from this week 20 years ago, telling the story of all the new entrants. I am Samuel Spencer, and this week we are also the podcast that gets this feeling, and every time we kiss, I swear I could fly. Can't you feel my heartbeat fast? I want this to last. Need you by my side. That is one of the 11 songs we'll be talking about this week, Cascada's Everytime We Touch.
'Cause every time we touch, I get this feeling.
It actually came out last week while we were on holiday, entered the charts on downloads alone in the mid-teens. It's going to be one of the big challenges for the number one spot, trying to knock Shakira off that number one spot where she's been for now 3 weeks. Will Cascada be able to do it? Or will new songs from Orson, The View, or Cassie manage it? They are all songs we'll be talking about. 9 new entries that entered the chart this week between August 13th and August 19th, 2006. We'll also talk about 2 songs that entered the chart last week and have remained on the chart. They are Cascada's Everytime We Touch and the Similus, All This Love, a summer dance smash, one of my favourite dance songs of the year. If you want to hear us talk about the 4 songs that entered the chart last week while we were on holiday but have since left the chart, I will be doing a special mini episode on Patreon, which will be released sometime this week, talking about those 4 lost songs. So check that out. If you're desperate to hear about every song from 2006, and why wouldn't you? It's been a fantastic year for music so far, and so let's get into the top 40 from this week in 2006.
The top 40.
That means starting with the bargain bin.
Bargain bin.
The songs that have flopped and the songs that are on their way to the top of the chart. We have the former here, new at number
40.
Their last single gave them their first top 10 hit in 8 years. Only their third in total. Weren't able to follow it up with the follow-up. This is Primal Scream with their track Dolls. And you know we've got to protect the dolls. Primal Scream have always written about what they know. They're sometimes cartoonish rockstar soap opera writ large within the grooves of their albums, says Q Magazine in their review of this album, Riot City Blues, their second attempt to make a stripped-down rock album following their 1994 album Give Out But Don't Give Up, did give us the immortal indie anthem Rocks, but nothing else anywhere near the quality of that track. Primal Scream started in the early 80s. Bobby Gillespie and his school friend Jim Beattie making experimental music that saw Bobby Gillespie playing dustbin lids. They would eventually bring in bassist Robert Young, guitarist Stuart May, drummer Tom McGurk, and an actual drummer Martin St. John. Their school friend Alan McGee happened to be curating a record label at the time, and so they signed to it. Around the time that the first Primal Scream single came out, Bobby Gillespie had actually been the drummer of the Jesus and Mary Chain, the legendary jangle pop band. But once the Primal Scream single came out, he left that band to front his own band. And it was probably a relief to the Jesus and Mary Chain. Bobby Gillespie apparently was so inept at drums that he would stand up to play them and would only play 2 drums. Primal Scream, their most famous moment being their album Screamadelica, one of the first albums to bring together indie rock and the sounds of the dance floor, an incredible album that pretty much made their reputations. Since then, they've been through many iterations: the stripped-down rock of Give Out But Don't Give Up, the aggressive industrial electronic trilogy of Exterminator, Vanishing Point and Evil Heat. Now they are back exploring their rock and roll roots alongside Alison Mosshart from The Kills. The Kills best known for featuring, alongside Alison Mosshart, Jamie Hintz, who goes on to become Mr. Kate Moss. We talked about them in February 2005 when their track Good Ones made it to number 23. This single may be best known to PlayStation 3 gamers for featuring on the video game MotorStorm, apparently, an off-road racing game featuring different types of vehicles and tracks with different terrains, which may either hinder the vehicle's handling or improve it, according to Wikipedia, I think. Which I think totally makes sense. This is the sort of song that makes you want to get on a quad bike. How's that for a review? Although obviously for safety reasons I should make it clear that you shouldn't listen and drive when it comes to quad biking. Just think about what happened to Ozzy Osbourne. So this song, Dolls, named in tribute to the New York Dolls, so much so that the B-side to this track is actually written by the New York Dolls guitarist Johnny Thunders. New York Dolls, some people claim them as one of the original punk bands from the early 70s, best known for bringing together hard rock and the fashions of drag. They were all fairly straight men wearing high heels, makeup, dresses, etc. Their first performance in Britain was on the BBC's Old Grey Whistle Test, leading the host of that show, Bob Harris, to describe them as mock rock and basically slag them off as soon as they'd appeared on the show. And there's 2 points about that I want to say. Number one is bring back hosts and DJs being rude about music they don't like, something we obviously never do on this podcast. And number two, as much as Primal Scream like to copy the New York Dolls, they never follow them to the extent that they end up dressing like fucking puffs, as I imagine Primal Scream would describe it, in a heavy Scottish accent. And I think that's unacceptable. I think if you're going to embrace the sound of the New York Dolls, you should embrace the fashions of the New York Dolls. It's kind of how I feel about method acting. It's like, oh, you're an actor who built a shed because you're playing a carpenter. Oh, you're playing a gay guy now. Are you going to get bummed? Oh, no, you're not. That your method acting doesn't go that far. Oh, funny that. All of which is beside the point. The point is that the exploits of the New York Dolls were more insane than anything that even Primal Scream could muster. This was a band who at one point or another were basically all addicted to heroin. So in a brief tour of England in 1972, the New York Dolls drummer Billy Mercer was invited to a party where he, casually passed out from an overdose. They tried to help him by putting him in a bathtub and force-feeding him coffee. He choked on it and died of asphyxiation at the age of 21, leaving a huge legacy for this band. They were a band that were managed at one point by Malcolm McLaren, who took many of their ideas, although not the dresses, and brought them into his project, the Sex Pistols. Also, they were a hugely influential band for Morrissey, who reunited the band for his Meltdown Festival in 2004. One of those bands whose sales are much smaller than the influence they've had on rock and roll, including this song by Primal Scream, just scraping into the top 40, as is our next new entry.
39.
My two least favourite things to talk about on this podcast are dodgy dance duos and emo, so you'll be pleased to know we have both on this chart. Oh joy, let's get it over with at 39, a new entry. Panic at the Disco with Lying is the most fun a girl can have without taking her clothes off. That's the second top 40 for Panic at the Disco, following May's But It's Better If You Do, got to number 23. Both Lying is the most fun a girl can have without taking her clothes off and But It's Better If You Do are quotes from the Natalie Portman movie Closer. In fact, they come one after the other in the film.
Lying's the most fun a girl can have without taking her clothes off. But it's better if you do.
Weirdly though, But It's Better If You Do came out first. Make it make sense. They clearly like this movie. You may have seen it. Stars Natalie Portman, Clive Owen, Julia Roberts and Jude Law, who are sort of joined together through a series of romantic and sexual entanglements. In the film, Jude Law publishes a book called The Aquarium, and so it may not be a coincidence that this video features a world in which everyone has fish tanks for heads. We see a girl walking down the street who notices a stray fish, who she picks up and puts in her tank, which apparently represents sleeping with a boy, and then her fish boyfriend finds out and dies, leading an ambulance to revive him. The ambulance team, played by the band, putting all of the fish in the water, sort of thing that emo bands do, clunky metaphors. In a fan Q&A, Spencer Smith, the drummer of the band, was asked why they liked this film so much. There are 2 song titles, and that's only because the quote is so long we had to break it into 2. It was pretty much a case of timing. We were trying to think of titles for the album, and we saw Closer, and we liked the line. No deeper meaning than that. Brendan Urie, however, the singer of the band, told Vice there was a little bit more to it. One fact was wanting to separate ourselves by using inspiration from books and movies, anything but music, because at that time the 4 of us were just reading and watching movies like, he calls it The Closer, and we'd pull quotes from that. And we kept a lot of that stuff because it was different and we didn't know a lot of bands doing that. The other part is that I was in a practice space with 3 other guys and every band around you in Vegas is doing new metal bullshit, and we hated that. They did, however, like the anger of new metal, particularly the anger directed at women. Much of the songs on this album, including this one, were Ryan Ross's anger toward a girlfriend who had cheated on him, ending their 3-year relationship. At the time, it felt like the world had ended, he told The Guardian. I hated everything. It affected that whole album. I guess it's good that I wrote it down. I might have stabbed somebody. Closer has a weirdly big influence on emo bands for some reason. Also, lines from the film referenced in the Fall Out Boy song, Thanks for the Memories, or should I say, Thanks for the Memories. As It Is Written. We'll get to that song, I think, next year.
Pete Wentz also wrote He Tastes Like You, Only Sweeter, Thanks for the Memories, which is also a line from that same movie.
It tastes like you, but sweeter.
This led, perhaps understandably, The Guardian to ask whether there was a streak of misogyny in emo music, leading Pete Wentz to say, "We don't hate girls, we hate everybody." Which means you do hate girls. They just are just one of the people you hate. I'm not sure that's better. Brendan Urie did, in the same interview, accept that some of Panic at the Disco's songs, including this one, are demeaning in a way, but only to one person. It was meant to make her feel bad. Which, again, I'm not sure that that's better. But maybe the band did receive some karma for their hitting out at this girl. At Reading Festival in 2006, someone bottled the band's performance, and Brendan Urie was actually knocked out by a bottle. However, the fact that he passed out and then was revived and then kept playing won the respect of the audience. To a certain extent, they sort of become a band that have an interesting place in pop music. For example, Kerrang! Magazine simultaneously voted them the best and worst band of the year in the same year, whilst NME in 2007 called them the worst band. And that's saying something in 2007. The pigeon detectors were around, you know? Their interesting relationship with the critics, though, we can get into when they return in November with I Write Sins, Not Tragedies, a song that if my secondary school had a chart, would have been number one for most of late 2006. So we'll see if the wider world is following suit a little bit later on in the year. However, we have a few not new entries to talk about. Shock horror.
38.
MyMyMy by Armand van Helden. That somehow made it to 10 weeks on this chart, just slowly creeping along, as many dance tracks are starting to do. The problems that we were seeing earlier in the year and in 2005, where dance songs couldn't really get a foothold in downloads and would quickly fall off the chart, seems to have been solved. 5 weeks for Red Hot Chili Peppers at
37.
with Tell Me Baby.
Tell me, baby, what's your story?
Whilst at
36.
we are looking at the 18th week. Could they sneak into the 20-week club? From Paris to Berlin by Infernal.
In every disco I get in, my heart is pumping for love.
Taking us to a new entry at
35.
a song that should have been number one this week, although it's obviously not anywhere near there at the moment. Its highest chart placement is actually going to come next year when it re-enters the chart, but for now it's here at number 35. A song that's going to make you put up shelves just by hearing it due to its association with a series of Homebase ads you may remember.
At Homebase, you could breathe new life into your kitchen.
This is Peter, Bjorn and John with Victoria Bergsman, their track Young Folks.
And we don't care about the young folks.
Let me just open my Diet Coke before we talk about this song. Little peek behind the curtain, it is 10:30, but what can I say? I'm an animal, especially when it comes to Diet Coke. This is really the podcast that Diet Coke built, and yet still no sponsorship from them. In fact, I have to pay them many pounds a week. Okay, the impeccably named Peter, Bjorn and John, you won't believe what their names are. Yes, that's right. Peter Moran, Bjorn Idling and John Eriksson. Here joined by Victoria Bergsman of the Swedish indie rock band The Concretes, whose peak on these charts so far is when the track Chosen One got to number 51 in March 2006. Peter and Bjorn had been in bands together since being in high school, but it wasn't until they moved to Stockholm and met John that anything began happening for them. They released their first EP in 2001, with their first album come out in 2004. They had actually considered splitting up before releasing this track and its subsequent album Writer's Block. They didn't have a record deal, but they decided that they would take one last chance and release it independently if they had to, trying to make money on it by keeping it at an incredibly low budget, which kind of gives it a DIY sound that is basically its entire charm, I would say. Originally, it was conceived as a jazz piece. Bjorn had whistled on the demo so he could remember how the tune went, but then they put some tape delay on that echo, basically because they were recording in a very DIY setup and it sort of hid the real sort of crustiness of that. And they played it back and they liked the whistling so much that they kept it, causing many an indie kid to have a go at spontaneous whistling at their indie disco of choice in the mid-2000s. But whistles are only the beginning of the odd instrumentation on this song, which features bongos, the sounds of boots on a laminated floor, and tubular bells, the instrument that asked the crucial question of what if a bell was a tube. There were multiple singers that they tried to get on the track before asking Victoria Bergsman to join it. The song was too low for her, which led to them basically pitching the whole song up, which made apparently the whistling much harder to do on stage, which will become a problem for them a little bit later on. But with Victoria on board, they recorded the song in about an hour with just a couple of microphones and a drum kit that they bought from Craigslist. Bjorn told The Guardian, "This is not the gear for making a hit record, but that's our sound, I guess." And I have to say, it's this DIY approach, I think, which is probably the most exciting thing happening in 2006. As much as indie music is sort of being taken over by these big label-backed, shiny, meaningless indie rock bands, it also is a situation where sort of at-home recording is cheap enough and accessible enough, and there's so many ways to distribute your stuff away from major record labels, that really interesting music can sort of sneak its way onto the chart, which we love, and obviously big advocates of the DIY approach here, even if we are trying to suck the corporate tea of Diet Coke, if they'd have us. Peter Moran described this song as two jaded people meeting in a bar and cautiously exploring the possibility of connection. Despite its title Young Folks, it's not about young folks, it's about two older people comparing themselves to sort of youngsters jumping around and shagging everyone, whereas these two people are able to meet and bond over being burnt out from their younger relationships. Peter, meanwhile, describes it as, it's sort of like a club song, but not like a big club song, not like a macho club song. It's a club song for dorks, and we are all dorks here at the 2000s chart show, so this is perhaps why this song has always held a special place in my heart, and not only my heart. Pitchfork named it the 5th best track of 2006, while NME called it the 2nd best track of the year. Pitchfork's Song of the Year was My Love by Justin Timberlake. NME's was Hot Chips Over and Over. And actually, NME sort of proving what I said earlier about the rise of the DIY movement. Their top 10 really shows us that while these male-fronted indie bands are sort of moving into landfill territory, there is still some amazing stuff coming out in 2006. It might actually be the peak of the indie boom in some ways, especially, I think, for female-fronted bands. So the top 10 includes Cheated Hearts by the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, Wasted Little DJs by The View, a song we'll be talking about later on this show, Rehab by Amy Winehouse, CSS's Let's Make Love and Listen to Death from Above, an absolute indie classic, Standing in the Way of Control by The Gossip, some amazing songs still to come this year. This song, slowly a huge word-of-mouth success, played over 100 million times on MySpace, starting a slow crawl of success that will end with it named the #1 song of 2007 by the iTunes Store, leading to the band playing this song with Kanye West, who sampled it for a mixtape. They performed it with him at the Way Out West Festival in Gothenburg, Sweden, and it's here that their high-pitched whistling got them in trouble. They botched it so badly that Kanye West actively called them out on stage for their bad whistling. We'll leave this song with the words of Peter in The Guardian. I sort of hated Young Folks briefly, but now it's many years in the past, and it's wonderful to have been part of an evergreen thing. We can still continue to make a living out of music because of that song. In the early years of the band, I was studying to become a librarian. I still haven't had to become a librarian, so that's a good thing. And it's a good thing because it gave us Young Folks here at number 35. One more new entry in the bargain bin, so let's get to it. 34, Ray La Montagne. 5 weeks on the chart for that, which is pretty good going for, again, another sort of DIY word-of-mouth hit.
34.
My woman.
33.
World Hold On, Children of the Sky.
Hold on.
32.
Who Knew by Pink, reaching its 3rd month on the chart.
'Cause you said forever.
Before another new entry, this is a dance duo I'm afraid to say at 31. It's Take It, Closing Time by Tom Novy and Lima.
31.
Find a chance, so take it.
This Tom Novy's follow-up to the top 10 hit Your Body from December 2005. In case you've forgotten, and how possibly could you, Tom Novy is a German DJ, Thomas Reichhold, performing again with Lima, with whom he collaborated on a track called Now or Never, to which the British record-buying public replied, never, leaving it at number 64. Lima, being a dance singer so anonymous that I can't even find her surname online. I can tell you, however, that Tom Novy is a fairly well-known DJ and presenter in Germany who presented the MTV Germany's dance floor charts. So that might be fun to any German MTV fans we have listening. Guten Tag. As you can see, we're already really pulling teeth with anything interesting to say about Tom Novy or Lima. I can say he will have an international hit with a track called Superstar in 2 years, which will only make it to number 32 here. And I can also tell you he was the first German DJ ever to mix a Ministry of Sound annual compilation and the first German to mix a Global Underground compilation, which is vaguely interesting, I guess, if, like me, you're a little bit obsessed with mixed dance compilation CDs, which I sort of have a weird collection of, even though they are almost literally worthless. You try and sell them, you can't get anything more than £1 for any of them, but it's kind of nice to just listen to a little DJ set contained on a CD. And that's really all there is to say about this track, which I would say is anonymous even for dance duos. And so we get to leave it here in the bargain bin. Also alongside it is Valerie by the Zootons at number
30.
Stop making a fool out of me.
Closing the bargain bin. That takes us into the top 30 with songs still to come from Cassie, Chamillionaire, Michael Gray, Orson and The View, as well as The Similou and Cascada from last week. And so let's keep moving up this chart, shall we?
29.
Get Together by Madonna, a month on the chart for that one. Not having anything like the staying power of Hung Up or Sorry, but that probably speaks to the fact that Confessions on a Dance Floor was such a big album. And I'm recording this after Madonna has had her first top 10 hit in 17 years, her first since Celebration back in 2009. I'm obviously ecstatic and very pleased for her, although I will say that she did cheat a little bit. She cheated in the same way that Kylie cheated, actually. I wonder whether she learnt it from her. On the Madonna store, you could buy CD single of Love Sensation. I have one. There were 3 variants of it, all of which cost £2. And if you don't know about the rules of the modern chart, physical sales are worth, I think it's worth 100 paid streams and 1,000 unpaid streams. So basically, if you can encourage enough fans to buy 3 physical sales, like, you can really start moving up the chart very quickly. Does it reflect how many people are really listening to it? Not really. But hey, if it means that we get another week of Madonna in the top 40 and not fucking Alex Warren or somebody, then that's sort of fine by me. And to her credit, at least you had to buy each of those CD singles individually. She didn't do what Leanne from Little Mix did and only have on her shop packs of 2 available, so that everybody who wanted to buy it was forced to buy 2 copies of it, thus doubling their physical sales, which is really cheating, which might be libelous, so I would say that's my opinion. It isn't cheating in that it follows the rules of the official charts, but I would say it's not in the spirit of the rules. And that's a sort of nerdy chart analysis that hopefully you want from us, because you're going to get fucking lots of it over the next 7 years of this podcast. At 28 now, we have a new entry. David Guetta is tuning up with The Egg to give us Love Don't Let Me Go, Walking Away, because the release schedules are very strange in August 2006. Some weeks having loads of singles, some having none at all. We're actually going to talk about that song next week, as well as the track Horny as a Dandy by Moose T and the Dandy Warhols. That we're also pushing to next week. Even though I am excited to talk about that because this is a song that I actually bought on CD at the time, so that will be good.
28.
But instead we're going to talk about another new entry this week, a new act.
27.
Their third single, their first went all the way to number 1. They followed up with a number 11 hit. Now can only make it to number 27. This is Orson with the last single from their album Bright Idea. This is Happiness. Orson, we talked about it before, a band that were LA-based. A lot of them worked in the TV and film industry and were sort of formed a band on the side. They weren't really able to get it together in America. They happened to play a showcase gig, though, in Britain, where they instantly had a lot of attention from the record companies, leading them to getting a record deal and actually moving here to try and forge their career in Britain. Unfortunately for them, they only have one more top 40 to come in the future, so I hope those British mortgages were not too long and expensive. It kind of makes all of the people who breathlessly praised them as the hot new thing seem just a little silly. I literally found quotes of people calling them the missing link between the Rolling Stones and the Scissor Sisters, which no they weren't, and no they won't be. I think the problem with them, we've had this before, is that firstly, the feeling, eat their nachos, and second problem is that in order to be the next Scissor Sisters, the first Scissor Sisters need to be gone, and they're not. In fact, I Don't Feel Like Dancing is due to be released at the beginning of September, so they're about to come in and show Orson how it's done, all without having to constantly wear ugly hats. Orson, Jason Pebworth, George Astasio, Kevin Rontagun, and Johnny Lonely and Chris Kano asked where the name came from. I think this is from Left Lion, the Nottingham Student Union paper. Most bands find it hard to find a name. Like all of them, we kicked around with a couple of possibilities until one sprung to us in a Hollywood cafe where we were all having lunch. In the cafe, they have great historical names to sandwiches and dishes like the Greta Garbo or the Clark Gable. We all picked up on the Orson Welles sandwich, and as we started to think about who he was, we realised that he was someone who always went against the grain and not always to his own benefit. We all felt that we could relate to that because we're not about the jangly pop or the rock and roll scene of the Strokes. In fact, we're more like Hall & Oates than the Strokes. We just play what we want to play. And to be fair, this might make them the only band who are named after a sandwich to get to number 1. Although, would it surprise you really if there was some shitty indie band who called themselves the BLTs? No. They say that this sandwich was cheese and bacon and pickles, even though there are literal recordings of Orson Welles talking about his favourite sandwiches, which sound very different to that.
And I can't resist mentioning the Orson Welles, a giveaway at $1.10. Turkey, India relish, and lettuce. I must say I call it very tactful on Mr. Rubin's part to leave out of my sandwich any mention of ham.
And this is a man who knew what he liked when it came to food. A friend of his talks about the time he was performing in Julius Caesar, in which just before being squeezed in his corsets to play the role, he would have a dinner of oysters and champagne, red meat and burgundy, dessert and brandy. And in fact, later in the run, he would sometimes, during the performance, pop out to have something to eat, usually a triple-decker steak sandwich washed down with bourbon. My kind of guy. And if you're thinking to yourself, haven't we got a bit off track talking about Orson Welles' favourite sandwiches? 1, have you listened to us before? And 2, it's because there is so little of interest to say about Orson, although I will say they are starting to feel the crunch of success by mid-2006. They had to reschedule a series of gigs in the summer after their lead singer, Jason Pebworth, basically had a complete body breakdown. We were crushed. Jason basically broke down for a week. We truly have been worked to the bone, travelling around loads and sleeping very little. Our days off would be spent doing promo work, so we never really had a break from it. Our management truly worked us to the bone, and none of us ever realised it would be this hard. It's definitely not all the glamour and richness you'd expect it to be. We were all basically burnt out in June, especially Jason. We see our live play as our only release and reward for all this work, and so to cancel our Nottingham gig, yes it is from that Nottingham paper then, was really gutting. We were all really mortified about cancelling, and it took Jason about 10 days to feel better again. And so let's give them a little rest, shall we? We won't be talking about them again until their final top 40 comes in October 2007. So look forward to that, as we look forward to talking not very much about Busta Rhymes with I Love My Chick. 6 weeks on the chart for that.
26.
Of course, Busta Rhymes, a former rap feature on the Pussycat Dolls, who are here at number 25 with their new rap squeeze, Snoop Dogg. They've been loosening up their buttons now for 2 months on this chart.
25.
A former number 1 continues its very quick fall down the charts. It's only been on a month on the chart and it's already at number 24. That's Don't Stop Me Now and Please Please by McFly.
24.
Ahead of them, the first single from Cassandra Elizabeth Ventura, or as she's known here, Cassie, with her track Me and You.
23.
Baby, tell me if you like it. Tell me if you like it.
Born in Connecticut, began modelling as a teenager, also appeared in the video for Just a Friend by Mario, the R&B singer who, of course, nearly got a number 1 single with his track Let Me Love You a few years later. She met the producer Rock Wilder, who I believe is the guy behind Dirty by Christina Aguilera, who encouraged her to sing. She took voice and dance lessons while modelling. During this time, she met the producer Ryan Leslie, whose biggest credits to this point were a Beyoncé track from the Bad Boys 2 soundtrack and a bonus track from the Britney In The Zone album. So hardly the hottest of producers, but he created a song together with Cassie called Kiss Me, which helped her get a record deal with Tommy Mottola, the guy who discovered Mariah Carey. Their second track penned together was Me and You. Originally, they were going to release it themselves, and they recorded a low-budget, quite risque music video, which then leaked online once the full-budget music video had come out. Cassie wrote on her blog, "The truth is, I did a video for this song before. It was extremely low budget and it was before I signed to a label. Unfortunately, that bad video that's going around, I felt like it scarred the very beginnings of a promising future. I was so embarrassed, I just didn't expect this." And things are about to take a, although she didn't know it at the time, horrific turn in her life. Around this time, Sean Combs, aka Diddy, heard Me and You in a club, loved it and signed her to his Bad Boy Entertainment label. They ended up dating for a decade in a relationship that would have some pretty horrible repercussions in her life, which we'll talk about in a second. First, this song will make her debut album go all the way to number 4 on the Billboard charts, while this song went to number 3 on the singles charts. The same year she made her movie debut in Step Up to the Streets. Then she started working on her second album, appearing on tracks by Lil Wayne, Diddy and Akon, but that album never came and indeed has still never been released, even though she has said at one time or another she worked with everyone from Diddy to Akon to the Neptunes. In 2015, Diddy in fact said he would come out of production retirement to produce it, but then 4 years later, there was still no sign of it when she left the record label and broke up with Diddy. Eventually, in November 2023, she would file a lawsuit against him, alleging that he subjected her to what she called a cycle of abuse, violence and sex trafficking. From the beginning of their relationship until 2018, when she alleged that he raped her after she tried to leave him. Also reported multiple instances of domestic violence, testifying in court that the first time she tried to sue him, she received a $20 million settlement. In May 2024, CNN found a video from hotel CCTV of Diddy punching, throwing her to the ground, kicking her and stomping on her in a hotel hallway, leading him to release a video apology, but this did not stop a federal case against him for sex trafficking, racketeering and prostitution, leading to him being sentenced to 4 years in prison on prostitution charges involving Cassie and another unnamed partner of his. One of the most explosive trials of recent years. Among the things we learned from it was that in 2011, Cassie had had a relationship with Kid Cudi, who claimed that in revenge for this, Diddy blew up his car with a Molotov cocktail. And sadly, Cassie's ordeal from this is far from over. She is currently being sued by a male escort called Clayton Howard, claiming that she and Diddy had drug manipulated and traumatised him when he was hired for some of their sex parties. This led Cassie to countersue him for harassments and threats. He claims that he got an STD after being forced to have unprotected sex with Cassie. He also claims that he impregnated her and she had an abortion without his knowledge, all of which is pretty sordid, and it's no surprise that Cassie has filed in that lawsuit that she is unable to fight it in the United States because she is currently not living in the country, living abroad with her new husband. So, a sad story, Cassie's, really. However, we will get another single from her in October when, unfortunately, I'm sure we'll get another chapter of her messy legal dramas that she finds herself in. But we're leaving her for now to talk about Neo at
22.
Of course, he's the guy who wrote Mario's Let Me Love You, so a unexpected link between him and Cassie there. Leading us to the track that, had we done a show last week, would have been, should have been a number 1. Last week was at 20, now it's at
21.
So staying firm in this mid part of the chart, this is the Simaloo with All This Love.
All this love, rainbow styling.
Call it a guilty pleasure or just the hangover of too many youthful bank holidays spent combing the beaches of Skegness and Mablethorpe, said Drowned in Sound. But occasionally, well, this time of year to be precise, a record comes along that would otherwise be dismissed as a mere pfft, as in they wrote PFFF, I presume that's how you're supposed to pronounce it, with a casual shrug of the shoulders if it emerged during any other season. Even if you never hear another record by the Simaloo again, and chances are that you probably won't, unless you're firmly associated with Gothenburg's club scene, All This Love will be synonymous with those lasting memories of being hot and sticky in the office or classroom, queuing up for the late bar on a Friday night or sat in a traffic jam on the M4 at 6 in the evening, windows down. It is the sound of the summer of 2006, and frankly, even if it will be as out of place in 3 months' time as Robin Hood walking through the streets of Derby in a camp red vest, that's fine by us. The here and now never sounded so fantastically day-glow lush. That song coming to us via Dizzy Crane and Jesse Nectar, aka Joel Eriksson and Eric Nicholson. The name Simaloo is actually apparently a shortened form of the Yoruba name Simalolua, which means rest in the Lord. What a Yoruba name is doing naming a Swedish pop band, I do not know, and it seems the band has never said. Eric was 5 years younger than Joel. They first started working together after Joel heard a electronic music project that Eric was making for school about trees, where he made the sound of falling trees. Joel told Freer Sound, and it had such an atmosphere. I had never heard anything like it. It was so interesting because he had something I didn't have, and I think he felt the same about me. I could produce and do funky bass lines. I come from musicality, but creating the sound is my weakest side. It was a nice combination. Like Young Folks, another Swedish band of the time, this started as a jazz song, which they were trying to find words for. Eric sang the words to this song over it, and they thought it didn't really work, but they liked the words so much that they wrote new music for it, resulting in nearly a top 20 hit, which is actually doing better here than in their native Sweden, where it could only make it to number 58. I would say because it's feeding very much into the sort of new rave sound that is bubbling up in 2006, thanks to bands like the Klaxons, whose first single will be coming later in the year. Although this is not a new rave track, but what is called Gonkyberg, a electronic music and new jazz underground scene centred in Gothenburg in Sweden. One of my greatest pleasures in life is tagging my music collection with like the oddest music genres that I can. Calling a track dance when you can call it Gonkyberg. There's no competition, is there? So a great thrill to learn a new genre here that I will almost certainly never need to know again. This song's greatest reputation is actually as an internet meme. The actual lyric of the track is "All this love, rainbow styling," which was misheard as "All this love, rainbow Starlin," leading to someone creating a website called Rainbow Starlin, which features edited Soviet propaganda to sort of add rainbows to it, making it one of the first songs. This is how we know we are really into the 2000s now. This is one of the first songs we've talked about that became a meme. Not the first one. That would have been Dragon Star Dente by Ozone, of course, becoming the soundtrack to the Numa Numa Kid. Also, we've talked about Crazy Frog, and I did a whole video on YouTube about the Crazy Frog meme. But this is the way that pop music is going. Love it or hate it, being part of a meme is about to be more important than ever when it comes to marketing music. As we head ever deeper into the internet era, which I think is really going to sort the music industry out forever and make music much better. And I'm just going to check the modern charts to prove that that is the... Oh no, we've made a horrible mistake. It's Alex Warren's all the way down. This will be the last time, however, the Simaloo appear on these charts. Asked why they decided to stop recording after one album, the band said, "It's a good question. We struggled a little bit with what was expected from us and what we wanted to be. We didn't have a clear vision of what we wanted. Sometimes Eric wasn't so fond of being an artist and I tried to encourage him. Sometimes I wasn't so fond of it either. We were struggling with stuff. We tried to make songs in the same vein as All This Love, but it was so hard to reproduce. I felt a little bit lost. It was hard to balance professionalism with an experimental lust for music." And it's nice to hear someone sort of admit that. We've talked a lot about dance acts that are forced to replicate the success of a big track they have. And we've had no one talk about the actual struggle of that. So good to see that side. I think we're actually talking about another song that's very much that later in the show. You also may be familiar of Joel's work. He went on to become a video game music composer, doing the main theme for the game Battlefield 1942, if that means anything to anyone. And if it does mean something to you, let me plug that I've done another YouTube video that tracks the history of pop stars appearing in video games from the first very low-budget, low-tech Shakin' Stevens game right through to Sabrina Carpenter in Fortnite. So check that out. As for what happened to the Simaloo, they actually were the support act for the Backstreet Boys in Sweden, but their success as a band did not last long. Eriksson went on to become a songwriter, including for the Japanese boy band Arashi, and Nicholson now is a editor and writer at Blinkist, which is one of those companies that I feel is always advertising on podcasts, even though what they do I think is slightly dystopian. They basically write short summaries of books that give you all the important points, so you actually don't need to read the book, because that's what books are, aren't they? They're just ways we ingest information. They're like Huel. They're not something you could, God forbid, enjoy reading over a long period of time. I can't get into a rant about that, though. We've got to enter into the top 20.
The top 20.
Tracks still coming from Cascada, Chamillionaire, Michael Gray, and The View.
20.
Super Mode with Tell Me Why. 4 weeks in the chart for that one. A great song for people who want to listen to a queer anthem, but with all the gay stuff taken away.
19.
No. We have a song entering the chart on downloads alone. This likely to be a big challenger for the top spot. Next week, I certainly remember this track being everywhere in 2006. Very much, I think, kicking off that sort of party hip-hop sound that is going to dominate the later 2000s and become some of the worst music ever in the 2010s. Although the warm glow of nostalgia means I don't have a problem with this song so much now as I did at the time. This is Chamillionaire and Krayzie Bone with Ridin. Chamillionaire, born Hakeem Sariki in Washington, although grew up in northwest Houston, becoming a major rap capital around this point. He had grown up not actually being able to listen to rap music. His parents didn't let him, but he found rap music eventually after he made friends with a white kid at his high school called Paul Slayton, who would go on to become Paul Wall, the rapper who we talked about when he appeared on Nelly's US #1 hit, Grills, which could only make it to, I think, 24 here in the UK. He and Chamillionaire joined the street promo team of a local rap label, and he impressed the boss of that label after they did a freestyle on radio, leading him to offering them their own record deals. By this time, though, the two of them already locked in somewhat of a half-hearted feud, according to Stereo Gum, who, one of my favourite features on the internet, we've talked about this before, is Stereo Gum's series where they go through every US #1 hit, of which this is one. This song leaping from the Houston rap scene into the national consciousness. There was a track by Mike Jones called Still Tippin', which became a minor hit across America, leading to, as they always do, record companies sniffing around for other Houston rappers who they could milk, one of which was Chamillionaire, who signed with Universal in 2005 after becoming known as the Mixtape Messiah for his work in that format in his native Houston. In Houston, he had been known for his strange and often hilarious rhymes. One of my favourite of his lyrics, which was pointed out by Stereo Gum, was, "I'm about to walk up on Bin Laden, ask him where he been hiding, then slap the snot out of him." However, as he moves into the mainstream, this sense of humour goes away somewhat, despite Stereo Gum saying that very few people have ever been better at the art of goofy, exuberant, unpredictable, elegantly worded shit talk. Instead, Chamillionaire made a conscious decision to stop being funny, shooting instead for some kind of importance. Then he got to #1 with a protest song so bouncy and catchy that most people didn't realise it was a protest song. That song is Ridin, which is actually a song about police who racially profile young black men who drive nice cars. They see me rolling, they hatin', patrolling, they trying to catch me riding dirty. Thinking they'll catch me in the wrong, they keep trying, keep steady denying that it's racial profiling, raps Chamillionaire, who is joined in this song by Krayzie Bone, who was a member of the rap group Bones Thugs and Harmony, who managed a US #1 hit themselves with their track Crossroads. They got that track to #8 in the UK. It took Blazing Squad to cover it, to take it all the way to #1. And they say Britain doesn't have its own talented rappers. Bones Thugs and Harmony had sort of split in the mid-90s as various members of the group fought addiction and mental health issues, as well as various times in prison, while Krayzie Bone became sort of the solid, dependable member, appearing on songs like Mariah Carey's Breakdown. Here, appearing on a song that, like All This Love Before It, becomes somewhat of a meme song. Many memes featuring somebody in like a ridiculous car, like, you know, or like a penny farthing or something, with the caption, "They see me rolling, they hatin'." He would never have another big hit in the US as a solo artist, but would get a top 10 hit when he appeared on Sierra's single Get Up, which was not released in the UK, but did go to #7 in the US. We will, however, get a follow-up from him, the, I think, rather brilliantly named Grown and Sexy, which is coming in December. However, Chamillionaire may be not worrying about money. He may have actually lived up to his name by being an early investor in the ride-sharing app Lyft. Hence why he probably never needs to release another track ever again. But there's also one thing. Moving slightly away from Chamillionaire, there is one thing, of course, we had to talk about related to this song, and that is the legendary parody of it, the Weird Al Yankovic track White and Nerdy, which actually gave Weird Al Yankovic his only top 10 hit on the US Billboard Hot 100. And in the video, he actually references something we've talked about before on this show. So the song is all about basically white and nerdy things that he does that means he can never, like, hang with the rappers. And one of these things is editing Wikipedia pages. We see him editing the Wikipedia page for Atlantic Records, writing "You suck" on there. This is a reference to the problems he was having with Atlantic Records, who had refused him permission to parody "You're Beautiful" by James Blunt. If you've never seen the video for White and Nerdy, it's well worth watching. The best bit is Weird Al and Donny Osmond doing their best impressions of, like, hip-hop dance moves. Donny Osmond, ever the professional, apparently came in, knew every word to the song and had already choreographed the dance routine he was going to do, leading to a #9 hit in the US, which could only make it to #80 in the UK. In fact, Weird Al has only ever had one top 40 in the UK, which was his parody of Beat It by Michael Jackson called Eat It in 1984, which is a real shame. We could have at least, Gangster's Paradise was a #1 hit, and I think his parody, Amish Paradise, is just as good a song. But British people, not, when our epitome of comedy is someone falling through a bar and only falls on horses, maybe Weird Al Yankovic was too much for us. I wouldn't like to say. But what I would like to say is that at 18 we have Razorlight with In the Morning.
18.
You know we won't remember a thing.
17.
Is Horny as a Dandy by Moose T and the Dandy Warhols, which we'll be talking about next week.
16.
Is Kasabian with Empire. 3 weeks on the chart for that. And another new entry is here at number
15.
Another brick in the wall of landfill Indy. I guess that's a mixed metaphor. Another bundle of trash in the landfill of Indy. Yes, this is The View with their track Wasted Little DJs. The View. Carl Falconer, Kieran Webster, Pete Riley and Stephen Morrison formed a band as teenagers in Dundee. Started as a cover band, but soon started writing their own songs while practising in their local pub. Released an EP which caught the attention of Radio 1 and 2 presenters who began supporting the band. Really started kicking off when that prime indie kingmaker of the mid-2000s, Zane Lowe, took notice, asking the band to appear on his show in February, kicking off interest for the band's songs on the radio stations and eventually now leading to their first top 20 hit. Everything going right for them. In mid-2006, they had ecstatically reviewed Reading and Leeds festival appearances, and they have been signed by 1965 Records, which is run by a guy called James Endicott, who was the guy who brought the Strokes and the Libertines to the public attention. What I think is most notable about this song is it is the rare sighting of Pig Latin in lyrics. Definitely the first time we've had a Pig Latin song, I think, on this show. For those of you who can't remember your sort of tween-age secret codes, Pig Latin is where you start a word with its first vowel and then you put the letters before that at the end and add an A, as in AY at the end. So as the song goes, Asted Way, It'll Lay, EJ's Day.
God, Homer, you're turning our wonderful little town into America's trash hole.
Urge, Ixnay on the ash hole tray.
Those lyrics, by the way, I got from genius.com, which next to every set of lyrics gives you a little box that says you may also like. And this is the funniest one of these I've ever seen. It said, if you like Wasted Little DJs by The View, you may like Slade's Merry Xmas Everybody. Algorithms. Aren't they wonderful? So, formed in 2005 when the band was 18, they took their name from their local, the Bayview Hotel, which they were actually banned from after one of them rode a scooter across the bar, leading to them moving to a different pub where they actually lived, as well as rehearsing there. They did their first gig in March 2005, and less than a year later, they were supporting Baby Shambles, and in fact, one member of the band was arrested with Pete Doherty after they were caught driving the wrong way down a one-way street. I'm sure totally sober. Very much known for their bad behaviour. One of them got a hairline fracture on his foot after jumping out of a hotel window while supporting Primal Scream, and the launch party for this single was actually broken up by police, all of which was getting NME hard as a rock. They named Kieran Webster from the band their 6th coolest person of the year in the annual NME Cool List. Around the time they're releasing this track, they are recording their debut album with the producer Owen Morris, best known for his work on the first 2 Oasis albums, and to a lesser extent the 3rd album, the overlong tribute to cocaine that is Be Here Now. His work on this track will lead to it being voted the best track of the year at the 2007 NME Awards, leading to more bad behaviour, such as when, during their 2008 tour, their singer arrived on stage so drunk that he was eventually had to be replaced mid-gig by the singer of their support act. And this bad behaviour, it seems, has somewhat continued. This is Kyle Falconer, the singer. In 2016, his Jet 2 flight had to be diverted in order to arrest him. After he was told he'd be unable to sit next to his partner, he hurled abuse at the couple sitting next to him and called a cabin crew member a puff. Charming. I mean, obviously, insert your own jokes here about how nothing beats a Jet 2 holiday. I'm more interested in creating a new chart rule here after Carl Falconer from The View used such homophobic language. The more that an indie band is homophobic, the more likely they are to be landfill. I think that's a pretty hard and fast rule. Like, you can't imagine Franz Ferdinand calling someone on a Jet 2 flight a puff, can you? You can imagine them drinking claret on a British Airways flight, not screaming abuse while Jess Glynn plays. All this, though, in the future for The View, who will continue But 2007 will really be their year. That will be when they get a Mercury Prize nomination, but first we'll get one more single from them in 2006, their track Superstar Tradesman. We, though, have one new entry to talk about. That's Michael Gray's Borderline, plus Cascada from last week. Last week it was at number 4. We'll see whether it can do even better this week, whether it can knock Hips Don't Lie by Shakira off the top spot. First, though, Gnarls Barkley with Smiley Faces. 5 weeks on the chart for that.
14.
Know how hard this life can be.
13.
A former number 1 for Sandy Tom with I Wish I Was a Punk Rocker, which has been on this chart for 16 weeks and is still at only number 13. Unless that really starts falling off the chart soon, we're going to have a new entry for the 20-week club, which I think is our first of 2006. It's only dropped 2 places in its 16th week, so I think that seems fairly certain of joining that group. We'll have to get a dressing gown monogrammed within the next month, I think.
Flowers in my hair.
12.
Is the highest new entry of this week. I say new entry, it entered the chart on downloads alone at 58, but it's new to us. This is Michael Gray and Shelley Poole with Borderline. Sadly, not a cover of the early Madonna classic. This, of course, is Michael Gray's follow-up to the track The Weekend, which gave him a number 7 hit in November 2004. This is following one of the 2 routes that dance DJs can take for a follow-up. You either try and replicate the success of your first track, making a song that usually is the same and not quite as good, or you go in a different direction and try and prove you have range. He's doing the second option this time, although I would argue that is the wrong one because this is not a track that is to my taste whatsoever. Michael Gray. Born Michael Gray in Croydon. His biggest success on this chart so far was when he created a dance medley for the 1990 Brits. That was such a success, it was actually released as a single, getting all the way to number 2. Kept off the top spot by Beats International, Dub Be Good To Me, one of the number 1s of a before he was Fatboy Slim. Here, he is collaborating with Shelley Poole, one of the members of the sibling duo Alicia's Attic, alongside her sister Karen. Their Wikipedia page says that their track I Am, I Feel sold 1 million copies, although quite how it did that, despite only making it to number 14 in the charts, I really don't know. Maybe that's how strong sales were in the mid-90s. Who can say? While we're talking about Alicia's Attic, I Am, I Feel a great song. I also really like their track Push It All Aside, which I think is from the year 2000, only sort of made it to the mid-20s. But I remember hearing it on Top of the Pops and really liking it. And so check it out. Since then, Shelley Poole has married Ali McCurlane, best known as the lead guitarist from Scottish band Texas, who she met through her friendship with Charlene Spiteri, who said to The Independent, "We had a few mental nights out in Paris together, and after a while I realised that she and Ali would be perfect for one another, as they're both out there on another planet. She's kooky, but not in an annoying way. There's naivety about her, she's a bit of a dreamer. So they got together, they're married now, and she became part of our family circle." Shelley said of the meeting, "We were out late once night, we were both drunk, and the first thing I said was, I just can't get a boyfriend in the music industry. She said, you might quite like our guitarist. I remember thinking at the time, maybe. She totally put us together though, because she thought he was a male version of me, though it turns out we are nothing like that." Shelley Poole has been, since Alicia's Attic broke up, making her name as a songwriter. She most famous at this point for writing the Janet Jackson track Slow Love from Janet Jackson's 2004 album Demeter Joe. Although unfortunately for her, she is definitely the less successful of the 2 members of Alicia's Attic. When it comes to songwriting, her sister Karen, my favourite track she ever did was Amy Stutt's Misfit, which has absolutely huge Alicia's Attic vibes, but she's also written such great songs as Switch It On by Will Young, Red Blooded Woman by Kylie, Put the Needle on It by Danny Minogue, got a number 1 single with Lola's theme, and also will go on to write Jamilia's Beware of the Dog. Also shout out, not released in the UK, but the solo debut of Lene, the singer of Aqua, her amazing track It's Your Duty, brackets, to Shake Your Booty. This makes Karen Poole actually the second artist in her family to have a number 1 single. Her father was Brian Poole of the band Brian Poole and the Tremolos, who spent 3 weeks at number 1 in 1963 with their cover of the track Do You Love Me, best known for appearing on the Dirty Dancing soundtrack. Although, unlike Karen Poole, he didn't write that track, obviously, it being a cover version and all. This song, probably best known for having a classic mid-2000s pervy dance music video. I definitely think there's a YouTube video I could make about the history of pervy dance music videos from sort of Cool On Me onwards. Just a little one for the ideas bank there. It features a series of dancers and glamour models lying on sun chairs and cavorting with other dancers on the top of various roofs across London. The dancers in the video wearing exactly the sort of things you would sunbathe in on the roofs of London, such as a white schoolgirl top, a black coat, a black bikini bottom, black stockings and black heels. The video was racy enough to be banned on 3 UK TV channels and is now giving Michael Gray a number 12 hit, which will be the last song he appears on under his own name on the charts, although these DJs are always popping up under other aliases, aren't they? So who knows? I do know, though, that we need to head in the top 10. So first, She Moves in Her Own Way by the Kooks, 8 weeks on the chart for that.
11.
Bringing us to the top 10.
The top 10.
Well, the only song we still have to talk about is Cascada's Everytime We Touch, which is challenging Shakira for the top spot. Let's see if she can manage it.
10.
Chasing Cars by Snow Patrol, that is in its 4th week on the chart, reaching its peak. This is the first time it is entering the top 10. And of course, by its peak, I mean it can't possibly go on to be successful for any much longer. Can it? Guess we'll find out. Paolo Nutini is at 9 with Last Request.
9.
Just let me hold you.
Things are staying very firm in the top 10 in summer 2006. I think it's because there's a lack of sort of major big releases, which is very much going to change as we enter September.
8.
Voodoo Child by Rogue Traders, been in the top 10 for 6 weeks.
Here come the drums, here come the drums.
Smile by Lily Allen is here at 7. It was at 7 in last week, and it's in its 7th week on the chart.
7.
I see you cry.
6.
Stars Are Blind by Paris Hilton.
Even though the gods are crazy.
5.
Another song reaching its peak after over a month on the chart. James Morrison with You Give Me Something.
You give me something.
Rihanna is at
4.
with Unfaithful.
And it kills him inside.
Christina Aguilera staying firm at 3 with Ain't No Other Man.
3.
Leading Shakira and Cascada, fighting it for the top spot. Can Cascada beat Shakira's truth-telling hips? No, she can't. She's, despite being our stinker of the week, she's here at number 2. This is Cascada. I say her. At this point, they are a they. It's actually a group, as we will get into in a second. But here first is, in its 3rd week on the chart, at number 2, Every Time We Touch by Cascada.
2. Stinker of the week.
Can't you hear my heart beat so I can't let you go.
Yes, as I said, our stinker of the week, there is something about this song I just can't stand. Which is actually quite weird, as I actually love cheesy Europop, obviously. This should be right up my street, this track. But I think I said this on TikTok, but this song, to me, is just the sound of getting fingered in a provincial nightclub. It's so cheesy and grotty at the same time. And nobody likes grotty cheese. You know, if you drop that cheese on the gravelly floor and pick it up, leave it. It will, however, be the first of 6 top 40 hits for the band led by Natalie Haller, born in Bonn, in Germany, to English parents. Born to a jazz musician father, they moved to Germany after he got a job at a radio station. Probably explaining the greatest contradiction about Cascada, how she is German and yet has the strongest Essex woman vibes of anyone who's ever lived.
And this was due to the fact that my jazz musician father was offered a very, very good job for the radio station in Germany. The jazz influence was huge. I mean, we're talking waking up every morning to a trombone, you know.
She took singing lessons from the age of 14 and started singing at cocktail bars in Bonn shortly after. She then became a session singer from the age of 17. She was in a studio in Germany doing a session for a DJ when she bumped into Manian and Yanu, 2 DJs who liked the sound of her, and they started working on a project together that would first be called Cascade, but then after they had some legal difficulties with the dance act Cascade with 2 Ks, they became Cascada. Yanu actually has had a number 1 hit on the UK charts. He appears on the track Heaven by DJ Sammy, which I believe was number 1 in 2002, has probably my favourite featured credit of any track. So Heaven is DJ Sammy featuring Yanu and Do, which has strong Dr. Zeus vibes. They caught the attention of an American dance label who released their track Miracle first to the American audience, who didn't pay any attention to it, and so they offered the company Every Time We Touch, which, rare for a Europop single, became an actual top 10 hit in the US. Miracle will be their 2nd single in the UK. they'd actually offered Everytime We Touch to a German label at one point who hadn't wanted to release it, so their loss was very much that American label's gain. And actually that really, for me, sums up my problem with this song. This, in fact, is another chart rule, I would say. Any dance song that Americans like is bad. So the fact it's got to the top 10 says all you need to know. The success of this track, though, will lead to them winning the World's Best-Selling German Artist Award at the 2007 World Music Awards. It takes its chorus from a song also called Every Time We Touch, performed by Maggie Riley in 1992. She could only get her version, though, to number 99 in the charts. So I guess kudos to Cascada for finding an obscure sample in this world of obvious lifts from very successful songs. And yes, I am talking about You, Tell Me Why by Supermode. Cascada will be back on these charts with their cover of Savage Garden's Truly Madly Deeply, which will be their attempt at getting Christmas #1 later in the year. Savage Garden got it to number 4. We'll see whether Cascada can do any better. But here at number 1, in its 10th week on the chart, this song keeps going and going, selling 28,000 copies. Shakira and Wyclef Jean are at number 1 again with Hips Don't Lie. I said as we headed into September, we would get some big artists trying to knock her off the top spot, and that is very much the case. Next week, a little artist called Beyoncé is coming back. The last time she and Jay-Z collaborated, it was on the number 1 smash, Crazy in Love. We'll see next week whether they can follow that up with Deja Vu. Will it be Deja Vu at the top of the charts? We'll find out. Or will the British public prefer tracks from the Arctic Monkeys, who have so far had 2 number 1s in a row? Will they like the solo debut of Alicia Dixon with her incredible track Lipstick? Or will they prefer the return of Chico or Ronan Keating? All of which we'll find out next week. Before we go, let's quickly look at the album and download charts from this week 20 years ago. For the second week in a row, the album chart is topped by James Morrison with his album Undiscovered, with the only other new entry of the week coming courtesy of Chamillionaire, who is getting his Sound of Revenge to number 33. Also worth noting that Bright Idea by Orson is re-entering the top 10 off the back of their track Happiness. As for the downloads, Hips Don't Lie, not only number 1 on the main chart, but also on the download one. This is its 5th week at the top of the download charts. It actually dropped from the top spot last week in order for Justin Timberlake to get a download number 1 with Sexy back, but it is now back at the top spot. Justin Timberlake's track will enter these main charts in 2 weeks' time, in the same week in which Chelsea Dagger by the Fratellis comes out. So some huge songs coming up as we enter the final third of 2006. So all of that to look forward to in the past. For now, thank you for listening for another week of 2000s goodness. Please recommend us to any 2000s pop-loving people you know, giving us positive reviews all over the internet. Really helps people discover the work we're doing here at keeping the 2000s alive. And we're doing that in a lot of places now. Go to our website at the2000schartshow.wordpress.com to discover all of the 2000s goodness that we are offering you across social media, YouTube, Patreon and Substack. And join us again next week to see if anyone can stop Shakira's hips from telling the truth. After all, as we now know for certain, her hips don't lie. See you next week.
Don't you see, baby, this is perfection. Hey, girl.
Da, 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 da.